Well, just in time to. I'm over here talking and I'm on mute. That's so funny. Just in time to start the webcast, I don't unmute and Jen's webcam freezes. I love this. It's always so much fun. Brandon, how's it going? How you doing? Brandon, I think you're muted too.
I'm
Is it
doing
going to be
very
that kind
well.
of webcast?
Thank you, sir. I'm doing very well.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be that kind of webcast. This is going to be great. I love it. I absolutely love it. So to all the insiders out there who have joined us today, thank you so much for making the time. This is the February edition of the Windows Insider Webcast. And special note, apparently today is Tuesday because apparently it is the second month, the 22nd day of the 22nd year of the 2000. So it's like 2/22/22, or whatever order you put it in, depending on the country that you're in. So apparently everybody's supposed to stop and celebrate at 2:22 p.m. today. It'll be all twos all across the board. So fun little random tidbit. So we will work on. I know Jen is working hard on her video stream. I know she's here in spirit, so we'll see how that goes. I may have to turn her video off until she's able to pop back in. So if you see the black box there, then that's what's going on. But anyway, let me get us on track here. I know you didn't come here today to hear me just yap and talk about random tidbits. So for today's episode, hopefully you saw the title out as we shared this across social and the forums and whatnot. One of the interesting things that we deal with at times is in relation to feedback. Yeah, we talk about feedback almost every episode, but this episode is going to be a little bit different. Hopefully you saw the teaser video we put out there on Twitter. There are some tidbits of feedback that are just hard to dig through. They're hard to diagnose. They're hard to troubleshoot. And as an insider, you may not necessarily know exactly how to file it, what to include, things of that nature. And then, somewhere in that gap between those two things of you knowing where to put it and us getting the actionable information that we need to address it, there's this big middle point where it's us communicating some of the things that will be helpful. So today, as I bring them on screen, you are going to see a couple of lovely guests here. Both Joe Robles and Shuba, who are here to come and talk to us about all this awesomeness. Joe, I'm going to adjust your camera frame real quick because, OBS is doing what OBS does. That should be fixed. All right, on the fly troubleshooting. I love it. So, if I could have the two of you do quick introductions. Shuba, if you wouldn't mind going first, please.
Hi, thank you. Very excited to be here, Jason. My name is Shubha. I go by my last name, so feel free to call me that. I'm a PM manager in the Windows Fundamentals team. The charter for our team is primarily to drive quality, and for that, we basically rely on telemetry and feedback that comes from users, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Thanks.
Awesome. And Joe, this is not your first webcast. It's been a while since you've been on one, but this is what, the third time, fourth time? I don't even know.
Could be. Yep. So pretty much, my name's Joe Robles, and in the past we were talking mostly about deployment, upgrades, and migration, those things. But now we're talking a little bit more about Windows fundamentals. And I spend a lot of time investigating feedback and looking into the issues and diagnosing the problems. So we're looking to dive into a little bit of that later on.
Awesome. Like I said at the outset, I am super excited for this episode because this is a really tricky area, some of the things that we're going to cover today, to make sure that the feedback that we receive is actionable. And I know she was going to be sharing some interesting information, showing some of the funnel of feedback and things like that. I know that there's a presentation that's been put together. So we'll walk through that. There's a couple demo videos that we're going to go through. Hopefully everybody finds this exciting and informational. We will point you to some resource links. And wow, videos are just jumping all over the place today. This is super fun. Wow, OBS is being interesting. So, well, you'll have to forgive us for the video jumping. Obviously, it's not anything I'm intentionally doing over this way, but hey, we'll work through this as we always do. So, Shubha, I will turn the show over to you. If you want to go ahead and let me know when you got the presentation popped up.
I have it up now. If you want to let me know when it shows.
Let us see here. We are good to go.
Oh, excellent. All right. Okay, just a quick run through in terms of what we want to talk about. Of course, this is probably a little bit of a repeat for folks. Is why is feedback important? I don't expect to teach anything new or share anything new here, but it's more of a refresher in terms of why is this important. We look at how our fundamentals team uses feedback specifically and what makes for great feedback, more from a perspective of just like Jason was talking about, how do we make it actionable, right? I mean, we want to take all that goodness that comes from users and their feedback and experiences, and how do we take some action about it and make our products great? That's basically where we need some help here. And that's basically two areas that we want to talk to you about today, specifically related to performance-related feedback and reliability. Specifically, when you hit a black screen, there's some aspects of the details that we would appreciate getting back from you so that we can basically make our investigations a little bit more efficient that way. So that's what I want to run through. We can jump right into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, like I said, nothing new here for everybody. Basically, what's feedback? Feedback is the voice of the customer, right? I mean, that's what drives innovation in Windows and Microsoft, for that matter. People have different ways that they use devices. They have different experiences depending on what they're running, using, what kind of device that they're using. And that's kind of where I think a lot of the verbatim or the qualitative feedback that comes in is critical because everyone usually has some kind of a reaction or a first impression as they basically use a product or they're using it, and that's the essence of what we want to capture. It helps with staying in tune with the customer sentiment, gain empathy. That's so critical for what we do within our teams here, to be able to actually go address the issues and the problems that basically customers are seeing. Find some meaningful solutions to it. One is understand what's delightful to a customer, so keep doing more of that, and fix what's broken. That's so critical, and that a lot of that insight comes in when we look at this feedback and we are able to use it for investigations. And last but not least, it's our first-hand experience that we get to hear about what users are experiencing as they use Windows and products with Windows. I think the video's up next, Jason, if you want to run through just a quick recap in terms of, how typically we expect to feed, sorry.
Yeah.
Lots of words here. Sorry, how do we file feedback?
It's quite all right. I am loading that up right now. Give me just a moment.
Help us make Windows 11 even better for everyone. Provide feedback. If you have a suggestion or issue, search Feedback Hub to launch the app and sign in. Select the Feedback tab and search for issues like the one you're reporting. If it's already been reported, you can give similar feedback and help us better understand the problem. To provide new feedback, select Give New Feedback and explain the issue in detail. Choose a category for your feedback. Select Problem if you experienced an issue you'd like to report, or Suggestion if you would like to provide a recommendation. In the next step, if you see similar feedback to yours, you can link your feedback to it. Finally, attach any screenshots, files, or recordings that can be helpful before submitting it. Our engineers will look into your feedback and consider any needed changes. You can check your feedback status, add comments, and look for any responses from the team as you preview new updates. Thanks for helping Windows help you. We look forward to hearing from you in the Feedback Hub.
You're on mute. Jason, I'm not able to hear you.
Sorry, it's me and the mute button again. Yes, so video is finished, and so we can hop over to perfect. Your presentation's back up and running.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So yeah, I think the video kind of quickly recaps why is feedback important, and more so how do we go file feedback, right? Get to Feedback Hub, submit it. What we want to run by you now is more of, so how do we use that feedback, right? The fundamentals team within Windows, our primary mission is about empowering developers to provide premium quality experiences for Windows users. And for that, feedback is critical because that's the insight, that's the insight from the user that they can use in order to be able to get some insights as to how to investigate and address the issue. And that's kind of what I'll run through really quick here is, yes, the feedback's filed. It's triaged as part of the process of how feedback's, categorized, I should say. And then when it comes to the fundamentals team, we primarily look at fundamentals from the standpoint of driving Windows quality for performance, battery life, reliability, and a few other things. But that's kind of where, when it gets categorized, the more information we can get in it, the better our investigation and bug fixing can be. So we use user feedback along with telemetry, and that's what basically helps us prioritize for how to address the most impactful of these issues that are, pain points for users. The richer the feedback, of course, faster the path to investigation and issue resolution. And so when do we think feedback is rich, right? Primarily, a few things to think about, 4 aspects to it. One is the time, when it was captured. If it's captured closest to the time that it was experienced, it gives us better insights in terms of what the user was doing or experiencing right at the time when the issue occurred. On the device itself, we've seen some users basically go onto a different device and provide the feedback because maybe for some reason they weren't close to that device at that time when they remembered to go put that feedback in. And that's why the closest to the time of when it was experienced is also critical, is so that we can get the details from the telemetry that comes in with the feedback in order to go, investigate better. And then, yes, as much detail as possible. We'll show you a couple examples later down in terms of, what can be vague versus what can be a little bit more detail that helps with figuring out, how to go investigate or where to start investigating. And last but not least, the additional traces and snapshots. That's huge in terms of being able to kind of even know where to start investigating. And that's basically what comprises of rich feedback in general. Joe, anything to add here?
Yeah, absolutely. We love all feedback, so all feedback's great. But I especially love feedback that has traces or additional details, maybe timelines of when you're experiencing particular problems, maybe how often the problem happens. If it's intermittent, where the system is working fine the majority of the time, but then all of a sudden something pops up and it's not not behaving, or not the system's not performing, and what were the type of things that you were doing or the actions. All that stuff is helpful. But yeah, definitely timelines and the number of times certain things occurrences. And if you do provide feedback from a different machine, it's also helpful to let us know that this is filed from a different machine, because a lot of times we do see feedback from coming in about problems, but it's on a different machine, and we do spend time trying to look at telemetry and identify, is there a problem on here? And if it's not on that machine, we're not going to find it, right? So just letting us know, heads up, I had to file that. And sometimes it might be because the machine's not usable. You might not be able to, especially in the black screen cases, if you have a black screen, you might not be able to get out of it. can't file feedback from that system. So we understand that, but letting us know that that's the case, that is helpful. So, but yeah, absolutely, all feedback we love, but feedback with diagnostics or additional information such as screenshots and timing, that feedback especially love.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And also, what this does is helps us identify if there are any gaps in terms of the kind of telemetry signals that we typically look for when we identify problems from a quantitative signal standpoint. Anything that we can get from the feedback also helps us kind of think about this more proactively to say, how do we reduce some of this disruption for the future? And that's basically
Absolutely.
where feedback, helps not just for the specific issue that the user's experiencing or you're experiencing at that time, but also thinking about this from a how do we make our products better for the future too. Great. I'll keep going unless there's more comments from the team here.
No, I'll pop in and say one thing real quick, and that is a giant +1 to everything that was just mentioned, right? Over the course of time, like one of the things that we've worked really, really hard at is in trying to get actionable feedback so that teams can like go through and do the collation and do their parenting and all of the efforts and everything that we do on the back end. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and between the deduping efforts that happen, because not everybody sees, necessarily has seen everybody else's feedback, so we go through that. But one of the things, and I know it's in your presentation, so I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but it's in relation to like what we can do with the feedback that we receive. So I'll save that until you get to that slide. I don't want to jump too far ahead. But the quality of the feedback that we get has a huge impact on whether or not we can actually dig into some of the issues. And I'll reiterate one of the points that was actually made by some of the folks in chat. I've seen a couple people mention this, and that is picking the correct category and context. So as you're going through feedback, as was shown in the video not too long ago, you'll pick the top level category and then the subcontext of that category when filing feedback. And based upon which of those two you select, the Feedback Hub application is pre-programmed to grab specific logs from the device that will help us assess and determine what could potentially be happening. And so one of the interesting things that happens sometimes is, like, here's a really good example. In the Feedback Hub, there's actually a section to give feedback on the Windows Insider program, to ask for revised content or website updates, things like that. And it's usually program specific type information that gets filed there. But some of the times we get feedbacks, whether it's Wi-Fi related or Bluetooth related, that happens to come in across this bucket. And it's good for us to get the feedback, but it's bad because at the same point in time, that category and context in the Feedback Hub isn't programmed to pull any telemetry or logs, because the information that comes in there is usually things related to the program or content that we have published externally. And so when somebody files an actual potential bug in that bucket, there's nothing actionable attached to it other than whatever verbatims the user has chosen to include for the title, as well as the detailed description that they shared when they submitted the feedback. So it gives us information, but there's not a whole lot that's actionable in it because there's nothing that we can use to see what actually was transpiring on the machine. So kind of long-winded to go through some of that, but I just wanted to underscore just how important it is to make sure that when you are submitting feedback, to grab the correct category and context, because that goes a long, long way to making sure that we get the second level of information that we're looking for, which is the telemetry logs, the traces, things like that. What Shubha and Joe have been talking about so far. All of that is super duper important to make sure, especially with the buckets that we're talking about today, with things such as black screen and performance issues and things like that. Without those traces and logs, there's not really a whole lot that we get to do because we don't exactly know what was happening on the machine other than whatever the verbatim was that was included. So with that, I will pipe back down once again. I'll put your presentation back on screen and throw it back over to you, Shubha.
No, and that's perfect. Segue to basically talk about how do we, improve the actionability from performance feedback, and specifically the kind of issues that we run into where, oh, things are running slow. Oh, I know this app launch is slow or whatever it is. How do we provide additional feedback? I'll jump to the next slide, which I think provides the visual of what you were trying to talk about earlier, right? That funnel. This is exactly what I think Jason was trying to say as well earlier. Is we start with a big number of feedback, and by the time we actually are able to use it for specifically investigating perf issues, it's a sliver. And this is primarily because of some of the things that Jason, you were mentioning is, the specific snapshots of the specific traces that need to come in with the feedback. The Feedback Hub has some great ways to basically attach it, but not everybody probably is aware of some of that, and that's kind of what we would love to run by. Our currently performance issues are only actionable when we have a specific type of trace associated with it, attached to it when it comes in. Like I said, I think it's probably hard to find, and that's kind of where we'll try to address some of that today to see if there's we can provide some visuals in terms of being able to get to it. It can be vague, and when we say vague, it's like it's probably what the user was experiencing, but at the same time, a little bit more context, like we were talking about earlier, is when did it happen? Was it on the same device? Was it a particular set of actions that seemed to have triggered it? Was it just unusual or something that they've run into multiple times and they just decided, that was the time that they had to drive the feedback. I say that because I've heard this anecdotally is, it's like 1 in 1,000 people probably write down a feedback and actually make sure that it gets submitted. So, it's definitely critical to, the fact that they find the time to go do that is so critical. And, we could be basically addressing an issue that a lot many, part of the install base is actually experiencing. So it's definitely critical to try and provide as much detail as possible. The triaging effort itself is kind of, it gets bogged down mainly because there's not as much detail in there to be able to send it to the right teams. And especially if these are intermittent issues, they're really hard to capture. And that's kind of where the traces can come in handy as we kind of think about this to say, okay, what was going on the device at the time of, or what the user was experiencing. And like I said, we start with a big bucket of feedback that comes in through the post-update slowness and crashes and hangs bucket from Feedback Hub. But by the time they get promoted and we look at anything that has traces in it, it's a really small percentage of feedback that actually is actionable for us, because those traces are the ones that have the critical information that we need to look at from a performance standpoint. And this is where we're asking for help. And I'll kind of walk you through a little bit of the, here's what you could potentially specifically do when you're submitting perf-related feedback if you experience that again.
Yeah.
Joe, anything to add? Or should we keep going with the...
So I think one thing that's important too, and it might be just a little bit more work, but it goes a long way, is a lot of times when a lot of the feedback we get it's multiple issues, but they're different. So it might be about Bluetooth and then printers and the PC slow and this app crashed. It's really, really great when it's, and again, it might be a little bit more work, but it goes a long way for us to be able to capture the right traces and understand each issue individually. So works best if we have an issue with the printers, it's filed on a particular UIF context for printers, or something particular with Bluetooth and the Bluetooth UIF context. But when we bundle those all together, it makes it really difficult. And the main thing is we're not getting all the diagnostics for each of those issues. So really critical to try to focus on a laser beam effort, a feedback of a particular issue, and then as much detail about that issue. And again, I know it is a little bit more work, but we're able to take more action on that type of feedback. So it really goes a long way with enabling us to fix the problems.
Yeah, if you don't mind, there's a couple things that I want to kind of add in here as well. I know that over the course of time, and even if you go look in the Feedback Hub now, one of the things, and I can't claim it's 100% accurate, right? Machine learning models are always a work in progress. I know that the Feedback Hub team, and we call them, they're just the feedback team because they span such a great scope internally now. they've done a lot of work to help improve the suggestions. So when you're filing feedback based upon the title that you've given the feedback and what's in the actual body of the verbatim that you provided, it's attempting to suggest context and categories. Sometimes it's super accurate, sometimes, the model may have a little difficulty in discerning exactly what you're trying to get to. So sometimes you can pick it directly. Sometimes you may have to go back and pick the categories, by hand, manually. But, we're all, obviously we're trying to get into a good state. And this is where I do want to take a moment and address something that I know has come back in from insiders over the course of time. And one of the things is, why didn't I see my feedback get addressed? And this is why we talk about feedback so frequently, is because of, what we're seeing exactly in, this presentation so far, and, what was shown in that funnel, for particular with, with the fundamentals area, is there are certain areas of feedback where getting the verbatims is enough to kind of get started, especially on things like suggestions and whatnot. But in the bug space, there's a lot of feedback that comes in that, without those traces, there's not a whole lot we can do. And so that kind of, it has the propensity to guide users to being frustrated, because sometimes they feel like, well, my feedback was left in either in an unaddressed state, or it was put into a state where they, Microsoft said it wasn't actionable. And, it ends up kind of connecting back to some of what we're discussing here, where, really there's not the logs that we need to actually be able to connect what users are saying and the frustration, the pain point that they're hitting, and get something tangible that we can work with to say, oh, hey, maybe there's potentially a bug here. Maybe we need to do some code revisions, things like that. So while it may seem, kind of repetitive of us, over the course of time to, continually talk about feedback and the importance of, picking the right category and context and providing detailed insights when feedback gets submitted, it all connects together. Like, this is entire, just call it the feedback ecosystem. I'm making up a term here, but that's really what it ends up being all about, is all of these puzzle pieces have to line up together in a clear and clean fashion. And then we get that signal that helps us determine what's actually happening and gives us something that we can go and work on after that.
Excellent. Awesome. So I'll keep going next to just walking through a couple steps that would be super beneficial to get like the right kind of report traces attached to a particular feedback. So I'll just walk through some of that. I know there's, sorry. All right. So first of all, to start with the category itself, right? I mean, if there's a specific performance issue for like while gaming or while streaming, desktop environment or browser, yes, I mean, I think you'll be able to find the right appropriate category and context. For more generic kind of system performance issues, you can actually go file the feedback under post-update slowness, crashes, and hangs. And this is under the install and update piece. This is typically where I think, it's sitting there mainly because that's typically where we see a lot of this generic performance issues being reported in general. And to get to it, you probably already know this, when you open up Feedback Hub and you type in some of the keywords like slow or performance, it makes a suggestion, and that's where you can go choose the install and update in the category, and then post-update slowness, crashes, and hangs as the category underneath that one, or the option under that category. If there's a specific boot or shutdown scenario, we have some specific instructions on that we'll share about it later. But when you're going through this, the most critical piece here is to recreate the problem. And I know this may not be easy if everything's slow and you're trying to kind of just maybe launch Feedback Hub and things like that. But trying to capture some of these traces even in that state is useful for us, and that's one I want to highlight on is, even though it doesn't seem like, it was transient, it kind of went away, definitely go recreate the problem. And for doing that, while doing the recreate my problem, this particular icon that we have here, include data about, and there's like a little, it says general, and then it has a little drop down, definitely select performance. I think that makes a huge difference in terms of, which traces it, prioritizes and picks up, and that's where you would start recording at that point. Of course, start recording, recreate the problem if you can. And we did want to address a couple of specific FAQs that come up during.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Shuba?
We may have lost her. Well, one thing is, I know that with the recording is it's not always easy to do, and we don't always know when these issues might happen. But that's where where it's also helpful to let us know that when things might be happening. So if you're not able to catch it on a repro mode, just letting us know when these things happened is helpful as well, or how frequently it happens and things like that. That helps us at least kind of get an idea on when the particular issue occurred that was creating an impact to the experience. A lot of times there's let's say several different telemetry crashes or problems on the device, and if we're not getting that specific repro, then we kind of have to guess which one might be the one that's impacting.
Yep, absolutely. That's the fun part. So this is the joy of doing live broadcast. Shuba apparently dropped connection from Teams. I think she is trying to reconnect right now. She was also the one presenting the PowerPoint presentation. So it is currently sitting there on that slide. So we get to do some technical wizardry magic over here real quick. Looks like she's in the process of rejoining chat.
Yeah. I guess the general thing to say, I mean, like with performance stuff especially, is that like it's typically not like there's not just one performance thing, right? Like there are multiple factors that are involved in what gives you the performance you're experiencing on your PC. And that's why the logs are critical, so that we can help diagnose what exactly you're experiencing compared to somebody else.
Jen, I got your video fixed. You are now back on screen. Welcome aboard.
The weather's not great here, and my internet went out. So
that is the joy of distributed broadcasting. Everybody has to be in different places, and we have to bring it all together and then combine it and ship it. It's kind of fun. Yeah. Anyway, it's how everybody knows that it's actually live and happening. This isn't pre-recorded in the studio or anything. As they say on some of the on like the TV shows or whatnot, it's recorded in front of a live studio audience. Well, that's quite literally what's happening here. So Shuba, it looks like you're representing again. So I will switch back to the presentation, and we can pick back up. You are good to go.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. It's just one of those moments when I need to go go submit a feedback. Awesome. I'm sorry. I think I got booted out as I was talking about specific FAQs that come up during this time, right? Typical questions that come up is, what if everything feels slow, right? Maybe you could try a simple action like launching a start menu, or kind of opening up taskbar or something like that, or task manager for that matter. And then it seems like some people could experience like transient issues that felt glitchy at some point of time, or felt like something was slow and then it kind of picked up. Like I was mentioning earlier, the recording can still be used. Turn it on, minimize the feedback hubs so you can, and continue your normal usage for a little bit. So whatever you record will also help with possibly maybe what the system did to recover from it, and some of that information is also useful from a telemetry standpoint for us. Okay, I'll keep going unless anybody has something to add. I know all of us experience some of this at some point of time. So if you've had other experiences with respect to performance and how you submitted feedback, definitely please share, please. Okay. All right. And then so coming back to the, we're still talking about how to submit it with useful traces. We've selected the category specifically as performance to say, specifically pick up repro traces that will be helpful for performance standpoint. And then here we are, finished recording, submitted it. It would be great to have a recording no longer than 45 seconds, mainly so that it's a little bit more, parsable, and we can actually get through that trace, those traces rather, I should say.
So hold on one second. Interestingly enough, that is the first time I've ever heard anybody mention the length of a trace. And I don't know why this has never crossed my mind sooner than this particular conversation. So let me dig in, right? I took the presentation down for just a moment so folks can see us discussing here.
Yeah.
Joe, how have we never talked about this before? I literally had this like giant light bulb moment. Like, how long of a trace is beneficial? Is it helpful?
It depends on the feature, right? But typically it's like, try to just capture the issue. Even with screenshots, I see, sometimes someone's gone to the effort of taking screenshots, but it's like a novel. And I'm like looking through, trying to figure out where, and then, the text might be something just like, it's broken, guys. And I'm like, I can't. So.
But sometimes on the screenshots though, there's markups on it, and it's pointing to the problem. And those are great. I love those. Those are great.
Localization, like translation stuff, when it's like, this is the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's if I get it. It's hard, especially for the transient ones, the ones that I don't know when it's gonna happen. Right. That's the tough thing, right? Because it's like, okay, well, I know at some point in time I'm gonna hit this, but I don't know when. So let me just start this trace and let it run, and then it doesn't happen for an hour or two. That's probably gonna be difficult for us to look through. So yeah, it's the closest we can get to where the repro is happening is what we're trying to go for. If that means that, now, better that you have the trace than nothing at all, right?
And better you file the feedback than nothing at all. If you don't say, you don't say anything.
That's the thing, right? Like if let's say you can't get it, you can't catch the exact repro, at least giving us some moments, signal. Some type of signal, like it happened at this point in time, or those things, that helps a lot. That helps a lot.
So
we've had some dev channel builds where like all of a sudden a dev channel build went out and there was just like a burst of perf feedback, and we actually, we use that as signal to like drill down and get the ones with the logs, and actually found what the issue was causing insiders to experience that. So yeah, I think it's a funnel, right?
Yeah. And I think, Jason, going back to your point, I think the 45 seconds, I wanted to address that. I think it's primarily coming from the fact that the size of that capture also, right, and that needs to be manageable. I don't know if there's a limit necessarily, but I think it also helps with basically be able to kind of start investigating that trace, and know that it doesn't become, gigantic in such a way that we're lost in terms of, where do we kind of, start investigating kind of a thing.
Yeah. Joe, to the point that you made a moment ago, if somebody does start a trace and it runs, we'll just say a while, some indeterminate amount of time that happens to be somewhat lengthy, and say the issue does happen again towards the end of the trace, say it's been running for 30 minutes and the issue magically reproed itself, and the user's like, oh good, it happened, and they go and they know it was caught, they stop it. Is it beneficial if somebody happens to go back and put a comment in the verbatim saying, hey, there was a long trace running, it happened during the last 30 seconds or last minute of the recording? Is it kind of like a breadcrumb like that helpful? So
that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a great tip, Jason.
Well, it's things like this, and this is, I'm telling you, like just the the comment about the time, right? It you know, it was just this innocuous comment to be like, oh, you know, try to do, and all of a sudden, like, my brain just immediately takes off running. We're like, how can we write content? How can we address this? How can we make sure that teams get actionable feedback within some of this? Like, there's all kinds of things that we can do. And like I mentioned at the outset of this episode, one of the things that's, you know, it's kind of difficult is, you know, insiders making sure they know the right kind of parameters, because they're doing us a huge service, you know, by taking the time to share this feedback, and the things that we can do to, number one, make their lives easier, and number two, to try and make sure that what they're sending us is more actionable. Like, it builds that two-way dialogue that I was mentioning earlier of, you know, of us trying to dig through and them taking the time to submit and making sure we're meeting in the middle together so that we're getting the right information, so that we get things we can take action on, and then we can take the responsibility to do whatever work is necessary and communicate in return.
Yeah. I guess that's where, I mean, reliability feedback has a bit of an advantage, because even if, you know, you can't capture a trace of the reliability issue, you could always go check Reliability Monitor on your PC and see if it has the info about the crash. And I've seen a number of pieces of feedback that actually just paste in the info from Reliability Monitor to be like, this is the one. And that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
perf is a bit more challenging in that regard.
Yeah.
To that point, Jen, yes, to your point, I think the crash itself is not as subjective, right? And perf is so subjective sometimes that the trace is helpful from that standpoint. Whereas if it's a crash, it's a crash, and the dumps sometimes, you know, clearly indicate that, and it's easy to kind of go figure out what happened. I shouldn't say easy. I think I should say easier to start investigating. My apologies.
Fair enough. All right, I'm gonna bring your presentation back on screen so you can pick back up. Sorry, that side adventure was totally my fault, but I appreciate the little tidbit. It's super helpful.
I think it's a great call out, and, you know, make sure that we all remember this, because even sometimes I forget to kind of, you know, keep it short if I can't recreate it during that time frame. So, awesome. Last but not least, you know, let's say you exited Feedback Hub. How do you stop recording? You know, you can't stop recording by right-clicking on the icon in task in the taskbar for Feedback Hub. And if you exited the app itself, where, you know, you wanted to kind of recreate the problem through, you could use the Windows key along with F to quickly launch Feedback Hub back on, and then recreate it, and then, you know, finish recording. So that's quick rundown. Don't think the process is new for folks, but I think that probably addresses specific aspects of basically what we're looking for from a perf standpoint, performance feedback standpoint. Okay, excellent. Should I move on to, oh, sorry, I forgot about this part. So moving on to two specific scenarios I think that people sometimes run into is if it's slow to boot up, the recording, cannot, like, this needs to be recorded outside of Feedback Hub, because this is booting up, and that's the scenario we want to capture. So this kind of talks through basically what to do there. You would need to kind of, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
I thought the Feedback Hub actually could take boot traces if you filed the feedback under the powering on context.
Oh, I see. That may, okay. I guess
we can think from that. That's
yeah. Maybe let's do this. I know there's a document out there that kind of lists this out, so we can go update that as well if there's an additional way to go capture boot traces that way. Sorry, I wasn't aware, and, you know, this is probably a little bit dated since maybe that was introduced.
I own one of the contexts that all the feedback gets sent to. So.
Well, we don't typically see, we see a lot of feedback about slow boot up or slow shutdown. We see it all the time, but we rarely ever see the trace. Yeah. So again, it could be maybe filing it in the right UIF context, so that the trace can be enabled. And then some cases, maybe it's not something that repros 100% of the time, in which manually writing the trace and adding it, maybe that's an option that makes it easier. So whatever is easier, if it could be done at the correct UIF context, and it persists through the reboot, then maybe that's an option. But this is also an option here where it can just be added to and uploaded with your feedback.
I believe the Feedback Hub has an upper limit of 500 megabytes when adding attachments. However, you can zip stuff, so that will help for some of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on that note, I think, Jen, I can work with you offline and we can see if we need to add any additional instructions to these to say, here's how you would capture a boot up or a shutdown recording. Okay, I'm not going to drain this slide. I know we can provide a link to the doc itself, right, Jason, in terms of where we have these instructions listed?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Should I keep going? Are there any comments or questions that may be coming up?
I am looking over in the chat currently. There was a couple of things. It looks like Brandon is answering some of those questions there. I think we're good to keep going.
Great, thanks, Brandon. Okay, switching gears slightly, and Jen, you talked about reliability, so it would be great to kind of, hone in on one aspect of reliability, which is the black screen. Any of you here experienced a black screen recently?
Just this morning.
I was about to say, I was like, Jen feels seen by that question.
There's a reason I tweeted out the keyboard shortcut this morning.
Awesome. So then, in a way, this is timely because the fact that black screens are easily detected by the user, but they're harder for us to detect through telemetry. And this is where, the additional help in terms of the kind of feedback that we receive will be useful, is so that we can kind of, enable telemetry signals in such a way that we can detect it much faster through telemetry. And also the complex part here is black screens can manifest itself in multiple forms, right? Some people just see a plain black screen. Some people see the cursor, it's moving, but in general, it's kind of a state where, people can't necessarily get out of it. And, what do I do now? So in general, for us, in terms of being able to make this actionable, it's kind of important to know what state were you in, and I'll talk about it in a little bit of a detail here, but what state were you in, or the device was in when you experienced the black screen. And because it can mean different things to different users, it would be great to kind of have that level of detail in the feedback and make it actionable that way. Any comments from the team here, since you've all experienced this?
I think the black screen support documentation on support.microsoft.com actually walks you through some of the different things to mention in your feedback. And I think you're probably going to get to it, so I don't want to jump the gun on the things you should mention, but
no, that's perfect. And we do have a plan to kind of go update that documentation as well, because there are some additional things that we're looking for. So that's great to point that out, that we do have documentation and we are in the process of updating some of that. But to provide a little bit more context, right? I ran into a black screen during logon. Definitely provides the context of when that occurred, right? But if we have some more details, so for example, I would say 3 things that are critical is when it occurred, what kind was it, what was the manifestation of that black screen, and how did you recover, right? And Jen just talked about the hotkey combination, and I have a slide that talks through that as well. But when the black screen occurred is critical in terms of figuring out, was it during boot up? Was it right after you logged in? Was it after hibernate or shutdown? And that helps with being able to figure out the state of the device. And then, depending on what you saw, was it a flashing one? Was it with a mouse cursor, or just a completely black screen? That combination of things, along with did the user use the power key to, we call it a long power button hold, or a, hold down of the power button basically to recycle power. Or did they use the hotkey combination to come out of it? These are great information for us to go investigate further, because that defines what signal we would have got right after the crash occurred, or rather the black screen occurred, I should say, because it's not a technical crash that way. So just remember, when you experience the black screen, you can recover from it in one of these 2 ways, but definitely provide that level of information on when it occurred, what kind of a black screen was it, and how did you recover from it, and that helps with our investigations in general. Sorry, Jen, please go ahead.
In addition to that, if you do see a mouse when you have a black screen, I would always suggest try to launch Task Manager, and if you can, check if Explorer.exe is running. You can launch Task Manager by pressing Control-Shift-Escape, and if it can pop up, it will pop up. That's the third one that I usually try.
Oh, great. That's another thing that we should add then, for sure.
And when you do the key combination, that also triggers a diag track scenario in the background that uploads some diagnostics to the system as well. So when you do experience that and you hit, always do the hotkey combination, that signals to us that you had a black screen and some diagnostics come up, because rarely will you be able to get this in a repro, right? Because when it's happening, you can't file the feedback. So you have the black screen, do the hotkey, that'll send the diag track scenario, so that'll give us a signal through telemetry that you're experiencing this well. Then you can file the feedback later and let us know, but we'll be able to find it.
See, this is the joy of this type of conversation, of us going this deep. And, I'll take responsibility. Like, this is something we should have dug in a little more deeply, probably before now, but, better late than never. Like literally what you're talking about right now, Joe, is, using that key combination. And it's triggering some of the traces that we're going to need, right? Some of the information that's going to help us go through and see exactly what's happening on the machine. And I don't know. Like,
I wish I had the data to on it, but we see a ton of black screen feedback reports. I don't see that many events for the key combination. So I see a trickle, I see a few, but I don't see as many. There, so it's not in balance. So I just think that maybe a lot of insiders don't know that they can use that to send us another signal that they're encountering black screens.
Yeah,
so
it sounds like we have some due diligence to do to make sure that we're getting the word out.
Well, every time I tweet the keyboard shortcut, I send an apology to the black screen team.
Oh.
But I think the more people use that combination, it will be super helpful from an investigation. So definitely keep tweeting, Jen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of diligence, the additional thing that we are asking for, there's a bunch of things that it kind of runs through to say, can you give us some more details here? Please answer as many questions as possible, in terms of what was the problem? How. Again, I think it kind of talks to the same things that we did already in terms of what was the problem, what did the black screen look like, well, it's like, specifically what was going on, and did you have a problem waking up the system itself? What did you basically try to do to get out of it? So on and so forth. So please definitely answer as many questions as you can, or this was extremely helpful in terms of like the level of detail that we can get to go investigate this.
Yeah, there's not a lot of the category and context combinations that have this, what I would call the extended input section. This happens to be one of them. And obviously, as folks can see, like there's some very detailed information that, is being sought that will help the teams go through and actually dig in to be more specific about, some of this question. This literally the questions that are on the screen that you're seeing here that help them dig in and figure out exactly what could potentially be happening.
Yeah, and speaking of recovery, there's like we talked about, there's two ways to get out of it. One is this hotkey combination that Jen probably tweeted earlier this morning about Control Shift Win B, and something we call long power button hold, but basically that's your power cycle. But if you hold it down for 7 seconds, that basically enables some of that telemetry to come through for us to be able to kind of identify a long power button hold that the user did. And then we kind of, be able to kind of look back and see if they saw black screen before it, which is what triggered them to go recycle their power.
As a random aside, I hope that nobody watching the webcast currently just immediately hit that key button combination. I think as soon as it pops up, I was like, "There's going to be at least one person who does this, just for the humor of doing it." Oh my goodness! To be like, "Oh, what does it do?" Click and be like, "Oh, unintended consequences." I
have a video. I don't know, Jason, if you have that you could roll. But this kind of walks through the same thing that we just talked about in terms of submitting, black screen feedback. That's super useful for us.
Yeah, I'm loading it up right now. And it's going to show the flow of what we just went through. So give me just a moment, and the video will autoplay here momentarily.
Hi, today I'll be demoing how to create great and actionable black screens feedback in the feedback tool. In step 1, make sure to include a concise and descriptive title. Here I've summarized the type of black screen, when it occurred, and information about the device. In the explain in more detail section, I included more context on when the black screen happened, what I was doing right before, what type of black screen, and how I attempted to resolve the problem. Additional details, such as whether you see a mouse cursor, whether the black screen is flashing, whether you see a completely blank screen, are also helpful information to include in the feedback. Remember, there are 4 big categories of black screen feedback. This includes black screen after logon, black screen during boot up, black screen after hibernate, and black screen after shutdown. This is very important information to include in your feedback. In step 2, you choose a category. Make sure you select Display and Graphics, black screen. In step 3, we can browse similar feedback and select one if it matches yours. Here, I'll create new feedback. In step 4, you want to add more details that give us information about the problem. Please answer many, if not all, of the questions listed. Thank you.
All right, the video has wrapped and we are back on screen. I will say one thing real quick, in case anybody who happens to be watching the video caught it. There was part of what was shown in there where it says make a new bug or allow for feedback triage. That's one of the internal options that we have. Insiders won't see that specific button, but I just wanted to call it out because I know somebody's going to see it, probably tweet me about it. It's, we record these demos on our work machines, so that is one of the differences that we have. So, Shu, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent, thank you. I actually, that was the main aspects of what we wanted to talk about today for sure. So I do want to still continue to do that. So it helps us to visualize users' experiences as much as closely as we can. Richer the feedback, faster we can investigate and help kind of learn what we could do for the future as well in terms of providing insights and thinking about how to prevent similar problems for the future. So, definitely appreciate all the help and the partnership here. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, all of our smiling faces are now back on screen. I know that there have been questions rolling through chat. I've seen a few of them. I've seen some of them get answered, both by some of the folks here on this broadcast as well as other users in chat. Jen, Brandon, I don't know, maybe Joe, I don't know if you're in the chat or not. Has there been any particular questions that we should try to address while we're on air here in the last minute or two?
Brandon?
No. I mean, there was some questions about the keyboard shortcut you guys had mentioned about the black screen. People were asking what was it again? So if you could repeat that.
I like to think of it as making a left angle and then B for black. So Win Control Shift and then B for black.
Oh, there you go. There was another question, and I don't know if we can actually get into it here, but it was also good feedback where someone was asking about the tools that were already in Windows to help recognize and fix errors, if we were going to be making any more updates and advancing those tools to deal with more black screen and other related errors in the OS. So that was like, clearly folks want more in-box tools to help do analysis over issues. That was a comment that was made.
That's great feedback.
Someone had a question about debug dumps and which debugger to use.
WinDBG?
That's about it.
Or, I mean, if you're using Task Manager, you can just right-click on a process and then say create dump file if you can, interact with Task Manager. depending on what the issue is.
Yeah, if you know we know what the offending process is. There's like all these really awesome like tips and tricks for, you know, ways to record things and how to file feedback. Jen, we should totally do some work to like publish them all in one spot. I know you've sent out
That
probably
would be
all
a
of these.
really good idea, Jason. I should get someone to help work on that.
Oh my goodness. Let's see here. Nothing else in the recent part of chat. I know we're slipping just a little bit over time here, so I will go ahead and wind us down. I gotta say, I mean, I've said, I think I say this in every webcast. I love doing these because I have a chance to learn something. I bring in folks, you know, get to partner with folks who work on different aspects of Windows or different, you know, features and products from all across Microsoft. And taking the time to have these discussions goes a long way. Not only to, you know, help me personally, right? That's not why I do this, though. I love being able to share this information with insiders to, you know, to help folks maybe that are new to the program or, you know, aren't necessarily as technically inclined as some of the folks who've been around for a while. Gives everybody a chance to get refreshers and learn new information. Like today I learned about the timing of the trace and how long to run it and, you know, some of the potential impacts there. And, you know, hopefully some of the insiders learn the black screen key combo. We'll make sure and do a good job of sharing that out on social and through some of our comms and whatnot. But the two feedback videos that we played, one of those is already available on the Windows Insider website, so insider.windows.com. There's a feedback drop down. You can click it and you can go see it there. And then the other one that we showed today about filing, you know, the black screen related feedback, we will get that posted up so that if anybody has questions on going through some of that process, you'll be able to see that video as well.
We have our generic how-to feedback stuff under aka.ms/how-to-feedback. But as Jason alluded to, we're working on updating it to have a little bit more information about the stuff that we just talked about today and some other stuff.
Yep. And I just dropped that link over in chat so folks can reference that along the way. You know, we have all these great shortcuts and all this good information, but, you know, folks need to know about it and know where to go reference it. So, you know, we'll keep working on our end to make sure that we're providing the helpful information in tidbits, and hopefully insiders will keep putting it to good use so we can, you know, help address the things that they find to be concerning. Shuba, Joe, I got to say, it's been super great chatting with you. Shuba, we hadn't worked together before this, so it was great to make your acquaintance. Joe, you know, old hat at this, you know, I'm sure we'll have you on again at some point in the future if you're willing to come back and pay us a visit again. But I will say, I thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate, you know, you coming in and joining us, sharing your knowledge with the insiders. It's been great. Hopefully you've had a good time. For all the insiders out there, hopefully you've learned a thing or two along the way. Hopefully you found this valuable. If you got other questions, of course, you can find us. Go to answers.microsoft.com. There's the Windows Insider subforum. Feel free to post questions or any feedback there. Of course, if you're on Twitter, you can find us at Windows Insider on Twitter. Jen spends a ton of time on Reddit, so if you're on Reddit and you find the Windows Insider section there, you know, yeah, she gives the funny look on her face. You know, she can help reroute some of the questions that you have anything there. So, just to the group, any parting comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, any of that fun stuff?
I'll just chime in and say this is
We
a
love
lot of
feedback.
fun. Sorry. This is a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Oh, we love feedback.
Yeah, you know, we had such a big build that was sent out last week. It's been really exciting with all the teams like pouring through their feedback. It's like, what did they say? What issues are being reported? What do they want us like? What suggestions? It's been fun. So I look forward to continuing to improve Windows based on feedback.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, we've gone over, but we will wrap. Thank you once again to everybody on the crew, Shuba and Joe, and then, of course, to all the insiders. We will have another one of these next month, so stay tuned to the next insider newsletter that it goes up, I think, later this week. And it'll have the March date announced in there. We'll have some more interesting guests and some more good topics to cover with you. So until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you the next time around.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.